What is going on, everybody? It's New York Sports Up here, back at it with another MLB video. I'm going to be making my video, my predictions for the MVPs for the American League and for the National League. I'm going to be doing my 3 candidates that I think can win the award the most. I'm also going to be doing 3 honorable mentions that could be sleeper picks for the MVP going into the 60-game 2020 MLB season. I'm very excited for baseball to start. Expect more, MLB predictions videos coming out your way. More videos coming out soon. I've been waiting to do this for a very long time. I'm very excited to do this. So I'm going to get it started with the American League MVPs, the 3 MVPs in the American League that I think could win the award the most, the 3 players that I think could win the American League MVP the most. So the first player, it's pretty obvious, it's Mike Trout. Mike Trout is the best player in baseball, and it's not even close. And he's won 3 MVPs in his career before, and he could even be the best player in Major League Baseball history. You could argue Babe Ruth, you could argue Barry Bonds, but Mike Trout has been so consistent ever since he came up to the big leagues. He has struggled with injuries, and he is on a weak Angels team, but I do think Mike Trout could definitely win the MVP again because he's Mike Trout. Mike Trout is the best player in baseball by far. He's definitely a guy who could win the MVP again. I mean, he's had ridiculous numbers. I mean, the past couple years, it's insane how good this guy is. He's the best baseball player in the world right now, so he's definitely a candidate who could definitely win the award this year. And another guy I think could definitely win it is Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman finished 2nd in the AL MVP voting last year. And Alex Bregman, I mean, ever since coming up, I think his rookie year was 2016, I believe, he has been a fantastic baseball player. He's one of the best third basemen in the league. He might be the best third baseman in baseball besides Nolan Arenado. Alex Bregman plays fantastic defense at third base. He's a great defender. Not a lot of balls go past him. He's a great defender over there at third base. He's one of the best hitting third basemen in the league. He's a beast. He hit a lot of home runs last year. And Alex Bregman's definitely a guy who could definitely win it again if he finished 2nd in the MVP voting. Last year, I believe he finished 2nd in the MVP, or maybe 3rd, back in 2018, because Mookie Betts and JD Martinez, I think, were the top 2 back in 2018. But I think Alex Bregman is definitely a guy who can definitely win the MVP this season. He's almost won it the past couple years. I think this is definitely the year where Alex Bregman could win it this year. So that's my second guy I think that could win it. And my third guy I'm going to go with. Now, a lot of people might disagree. Even though I'm a Yankees fan, I do think I do have confidence in him that he can win the MVP this year, and that is Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is one of the best players in baseball when healthy. He's one of the more powerful hitters in Major League Baseball. He's an absolute stud. He's one of the best defensive right fielders in the league, and for a guy his size, you don't really expect a guy who's 6'7" to be great defensively, but he's absolutely a beast defensively. He's great out there in right field. He dives for balls. He guns out guys from right field. He has a cannon of an arm. Aaron Judge is one of the best overall players in Major League Baseball, and if Aaron Judge can't stay healthy in the 60-game season, I think Aaron Judge could definitely win the MVP in the American League in 2020. So now I'm going to go over 3 guys that could also win it, but they might be a little bit of like players you might not expect to win it. So kind of like 3 maybe sleeper picks for the MVP in 2020. So the first guy in the American League that I also think that could win it is Francisco Lindor. Francisco Lindor, in my opinion, is the best shortstop in baseball. He's a great defender over there at shortstop. Even though the Indians, I don't think necessarily will be like a great team this year, I definitely think Francisco Lindor could definitely win the MVP. I mean, Mike Trout was on the Angels, he won the MVP, and the Angels were horrible last year. So that definitely means Francisco Lindor can definitely win the MVP this year, and I have high hopes for him. If Lindor can stay healthy, Lindor's the best shortstop in the game, and I definitely think he can win the MVP this year. My second pick in the American League for honorable mentions, my second guy in the American League is Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman might be the best defender in the infield, best infielder defensively in Major League Baseball. He is an absolutely nasty defender over there at third base. Not a lot of balls go by him. He's unbelievable down there at third base. Now, when Matt Chapman's first year in the big leagues, he wasn't very good, but when 2018 came around, Matt Chapman was an absolute beast. Now, I know his batting average went down this year. His batting average was .249, which is a lot lower than I expected, but Matt Chapman still had a great season. I think he had over 35 home runs. He had a great year last year. He's one of the best defensive third basemen in the league. He could go head to head with Nolan Arenado for the best defensive player, maybe even in baseball. Matt Chapman's definitely a guy I think that can win the MVP. Even though the A's, had an early exit in the playoffs last year, I thought the Oakland A's were definitely a team who could maybe get a surprise, win the World Series, because the A's were very good against over 500 teams. I think the A's can definitely bounce back this year and maybe make it far in the playoffs in a 60-game season. If the A's find a way, maybe even to win the division, I think Matt Chapman could definitely win the MVP in 2020. He's one of the best defensive players in the game. The final guy, and this is my pick, this is my, my homer pick to win the AL MVP, and that is Gleyber Torres, my boy. Gleyber Torres had an amazing year last year. Hit 38 home runs, I believe. Almost had 100 RBIs. He's one of the best shortstops in the game. Gleyber Torres. I don't know how could you not love this guy? Even though his defense isn't very good, but I do think his defense can improve. Gleyber Torres is still very young. I believe he's 23, 22 years old. He's one of the youngest players in Major League Baseball, and he's an absolute stud. Gleyber Torres, I think, could definitely win the MVP this year. And on a great Yankees team, I think Gleyber Torres could definitely be a guy who could win the MVP. I've got high hopes for Gleyber this year. He's going to go off this year. I'm calling that. Gleyber Torres is my third honorable mention, my final honorable mention for the American League. So now we move over to the National League, and I'm going to go over my 6 players that I think that could win it, my 3, obviously the 3 main candidates, and the 3 honorable mentions. So the first player I have in the National League is Christian Yelich. Christian Yelich is an absolute monster. He won the MVP back in 2018. Ever since he joined the Brewers, Christian Yelich has absolutely gone off. I'm not like I'm saying he wasn't a good player with the Marlins. He was a pretty good player with the Marlins. But ever since he came over to Milwaukee, Yelich has gone through the roof. He's put up video game numbers the past 2 seasons. He won the MVP back in 2018. I thought he should have won it in 2019. And probably the only reason why he didn't win it, why Bellinger won it, is because Yelich's defense isn't very good. But he's an absolutely insanely good hitter. I think he's the second best player in baseball besides Mike Trout. Christian Yelich is a monster. I think way over 300. An OPS over 1,000. Christian Yelich is an absolute stud. He's definitely a guy who could win the MVP in 2020. For my second player, my second main candidate for the National League, I've got Cody Bellinger. Now, I'm trying not to be boring. I'm trying not to pick, the obvious guys. But Cody Bellinger is definitely a guy who could definitely win it again. I think the Dodgers might be the best team in baseball right now. They have one of the best lineups in baseball, with Mookie Betts and Max Muncy and all those guys. Cody Bellinger went absolutely off last year. Now, Cody Bellinger had a fantastic rookie season back in 2017, and he came back in 2018 and kind of slowed down a bit. But this year, he went insane this year. He had a monster season. He won the MVP, led the Dodgers to 106 wins, has a cannon of an arm in right field, and he used to be a first baseman, then he moved to the outfield, and he was a lot better, defensively out there, and Cody Bellinger is one of the best players in the game. He's definitely a guy who would win it in the National League. And my third guy, this is my pick to win the National League MVP, Ronald Acuna. This dude is absolutely electric. Whenever he steps on the field, I feel like it's a whole new atmosphere. Ronald Acuna is an absolute stud. He had an amazing rookie year back in 2018. People were hitting him because he was so good. I think he broke a record for the most leadoff home runs in a game or something like that. Like leadoff home runs for to start off the game in a row. Ronald Acuna had an amazing rookie year and came back in 2019 and was arguably even better. He can rob homers. He can pretty much do everything. He's a 5-tool player. He's great defensively. He can pretty much play every position in the outfield. And Ronald Acuna is an absolute stud of a hitter. I mean, this dude's a beast. He pretty much does everything good when it comes to aspects of baseball. He's an absolute beast. He's definitely a guy, and he is my pick to win the National League MVP in 2020. So now I'm going to do some honorable mentions. Now, there's going to be a couple players out of the honorable mentions that you probably wouldn't expect, but these are guys that I think can definitely maybe shock some people and win the MVP in 2020. The first guy is not really much of a shocker. It's Nolan Arenado. Nolan Arenado is arguably, once again, head-to-head with Matt Chapman for the best defensive infielder in baseball. You can also say Andrelton Simmons, but he is absolutely amazing at third base. And even though he does play at Coors Field, a place where a lot of, where you can hit. It's very easy to hit in Coors Field. But Nolan Arenado he's not just good at Coors Field. He's pretty much exactly as, the same as good on the road. He's an amazing hitter on the road. I don't care that he plays at Coors Field. He's still one of the best hitters in the game. I think he's a top 5 player in my opinion. And he pretty much does everything right. What does Nolan Arenado not do good when it comes to aspects of baseball? Nolan Arenado is a stud, and he's definitely a guy who can win it. And it's weird how he's not. Nolan Arenado, fun fact, he's actually never won an MVP before. But I think this is definitely a year where he could definitely win it with the 60-game schedule. Even though I don't think the Rockies will be a great team, but Nolan Arenado could definitely win it. He's one of the best players in the game. Another guy, here's kind of a shocker. I'm going to go with Eugenio Suarez. Eugenio Suarez went absolutely off last year. Hit 49 home runs for the Reds and almost was close to Pete Alonso for the most home runs in baseball. He went off last year. He's an insanely good hitter, and I don't really know much about him because he plays on the Reds. I'm a Yankees fan, so I don't really know too much about him. I didn't really watch much games where he played in, but I didn't really watch much Cincinnati Reds baseball last year because I'm a Yankees fan, obviously. But Eugenio Suarez, just looking at his highlights, watching him on film, he looks like an absolute stud. I think he's definitely a guy who can win it. I think the Cincinnati Reds might have the easiest schedule in the 60-game season in baseball. So I think he's definitely a guy who could win it. And once he's still very, very young, he's a guy that I think could maybe go off. And I think he's a guy that could definitely go off. I don't know why I said maybe. He's a guy who could definitely go off this year, and he's definitely, in my opinion, he's a sleeper pick for the MVP. He's my second honorable mention. And my final honorable mention is Ketel Marte. Ketel Marte went off last year. Now, a Diamondbacks team that, once again, they weren't bad, but they weren't great, and they kind of exceeded expectations. They were better than I thought they would be. And the Diamondbacks are my sleeper pick in the National League this year. And I think Ketel Marte could go absolutely off. The Diamondbacks have great pitching. They have a great young core, great young core of hitters. Ketel Marte went absolutely off last year. Now, before 2019, we didn't really know Ketel Marte as much as a stud. Ketel Marte was a good player, but he was never really a stud. And ever since 2019 happened, Ketel Marte was an absolute monster. Hit over 300, slashed home runs, got a ton of speed. Ketel Marte can fly. And, he's great defensively. He can play the outfield. He can play the infield. He's a great player. He's a five-tool player. Ketel Marte is one of the more underrated players in the league. And probably the main reason why he's underrated, the main reason why a lot of people probably don't know him is because he plays in Arizona. Not a lot of people watch Diamondbacks baseball. So I think you got to get to know the name of Ketel Marte. He's an absolute beast. And he is my final honorable mention for the National League MVP. So that's going to do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Put your National League MVP predictions and American League MVP predictions down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your opinions. Who do you think is the guy who can maybe surprise some people and win the MVP? There was a lot of other players I could have put on here. Obviously, I didn't put Mookie Betts on this list because I didn't really want to be boring. Like, I could have put, like, Jose Altuve or, like, JD Martinez or players like that, but I didn't want to be boring. I wanted to be, different, put some guys that you probably wouldn't expect. And there's another guy that I might just add that I think that could also win the MVP this year is Yoan Moncada. Yoan Moncada went off last year. He was a top prospect. I think he's definitely a guy who can maybe surprise people and win the MVP. Yoan Moncada is a really underrated player, but besides him, there's not really other players I want to, I really want to talk about. But those are my MVP predictions for the 2020 season. I had 3 main candidates and also my 3 honorable mentions. Put your, put your MVP picks down in the comments below. Put your sleeper MVP picks down in the comments below. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.